Good afternoon, everyone. Those of you in Jakarta, and good morning to those of you joining us from Germany. Welcome. On behalf of CSIS and also Konrad Adenauer Stiftung office in Jakarta, my name is Shafiah Muhibat. I would like to welcome you to this second session, actually, of our series of webinar as part of the, this is the fourth CSIS KAS Germany-Indonesia Strategic Dialogue. So yesterday we have had the pleasure of the opening session and also the first session of this webinar, during which we had the chance to discuss about the future of international cooperation and public health. We had the pleasure, of course, to had a number of very distinguished speakers. We had a very interesting discussion. Discussing about basically, you know, about multilateralism, international cooperation, and also bilateral cooperation between Germany and Indonesia in the time of pandemic right now, the COVID-19 pandemic. For this second session today, we will move a little bit towards another direction, which is to discuss, to focus on economic recoveries. So international cooperation in economic recoveries, because we see that the COVID-19 pandemic is not only a health crisis, but it has turned into a multidimensional crisis. And I think one issue that most people are most worried about is the economic crisis. So states are, you know, preoccupied domestically on how to recover from the economic crisis, and also, you know, internationally, how they can cooperate with other states, both in the region or globally, to start the process of economic recoveries. And for this purpose, today we have the pleasure of three very distinguished speakers who will share with us, you know, their insights, both from an Indonesian point of view and also from a German point of view on, you know, how the two states can work together in economic recovery, and also how this, you know, both states can actually contribute in the multilateral effort towards recovering from the economic crisis. So without further ado, I'd like to ask the first speaker we have today is Mr. Hendra Halim, who is the Director for European Affairs 2 in the Directorate General of American and European Affairs of Indonesia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Pak Hendra is a diplomat with a very long career. He has had various postings, and we are lucky to have him today to hear about, you know, what the insights from our foreign ministry on, you know, how they can actually, you know, try to work together with the other ministries, of course, in Indonesia to basically try to recover from the health crisis and economic crisis. So, Pak Hendra, I would like to offer you the screen now. Please do.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Bu Vivi. Selamat siang all. Good afternoon, Pak Rizal, Pak Patrick, and Pak Yan, and thank you all participants as well. So this is, first of all, this is a great honor for me to be here. I do really appreciate for the CSIS for organizing this event, especially for inviting Kamlu people to be part of this seminar. And I also like to convey the regret from our Director General, Ambassador Ngurah Swajaya, who are not able to join this important webinar. And yesterday I followed the first sessions presenting Ambassador Hafaz Ugroseno and also Ambassador Peter Schuf here. It was very interesting. And I took notes, some important points were highlighted to bring the bilateral relation between two countries to be more strategic, and also not in the framework, but also in the implementation. So I think, and I agree that our discussion today is to touch upon, I think, where we are standing now, and then the advantages and also what challenge before us. And then we would like to see, you know, how far we can go from Indonesian point of view, or from the point of view of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And first of all, of course, you know, maybe allow me to share my screen with you. I think I have my colleague as well here. Pak Dani, is okay then. Just want to, I think, for the first, I just want to highlight a little bit about, I think, Germany in the eyes of Indonesian, or from our eyes, of course. And in this part, in this presentation, I really focus on them from the economic perspective, because I think Germany has become our main economic partner in Europe. I think first, Germany, of course, is the main trading partner for Indonesia for a couple of years. And then this year, even we can see that the German, according to our data, become the number 2 of investment from Europe as well. And then we always note that I think the visitors, the tourists from Germany become the contributed, is the mainly contributor for Indonesian tourism. According to the data, I think for the 2020, the trade between Indonesia and Germany reached 2.7 billion. But meantime, I think for the last 3 years, it shows that the increase of our export, despite deficit still happening. And then also we can see among ASEAN member, Indonesia is still number 5. So it's very challenging for Indonesia to put our rank become on the top among ASEAN countries. And then from investment as well, we can see there are around 311 companies, more than 300 German companies in Indonesia. This is very good opportunity for us how to bring the benefit to our national economy. And then we cannot forget that also Germany is one of Indonesian development partner in Europe, because we can see that the German projects and entire countries, we found that in the German also contributed a lot on environmental and energy sectors, and also on vocational educational training. And then we can see that also German give support to Indonesia in multilateral fora as well, or under development programs. And 2020, and then we can see that the total pledge from the German government to Indonesia around 70 million US dollars. But of course, I think this compared to previous, it's slightly decreased. But in terms of the quality, we can see the quality of project or development cooperation with Indonesia and Germany is getting better and better. And next slide, of course, I would like to follow about as Ibu Fifi just mentioned about, I think, what's the ministry's role actually in bring forward Indonesia in the global arena on economic diplomacy. I just want to touch upon a little bit about, I think, the role of Ministry of Foreign Affairs in this current pandemic. This is totally different. It brings a lot, not euphoria, but something like, I could say this is more evolution within the ministry. All of us, we have a sense of crisis. All of us now, I think, are in the same page, how to bring Indonesian economy into what we call it, out of the crisis. And then now at the ministry, we just established the special team for accelerating economic, which I also part of it. So, and we are focused on trade, especially to how to optimize our trade relation with potential market. And German, we view German as our main partner in Europe, not potential, but main partner. And then also how to accelerate our trade negotiation. And then on under investment issue, we also all together with state-owned enterprise ministry to promote our state-owned enterprise companies as well, BUM and go global. And then on tourism, I think this is very important in this pandemic, how to bring confidence with international community. So that's why currently the ministry, all together with other ministries, try to collaborate and synergize how to make special arrangement with other countries in terms of the travel arrangement. And we will see how far we can go with other countries in Europe as well later on. And then now, I think on this presentation, I would like to highlight a little bit, regarding German's economic recovery. Why we need to know about this? Because we would like to see where we can tap the opportunity from this side. First, I think if you see that thing, the German government, I think how in handling the economic crisis, crisis during the pandemic. It's very interesting to see that, because this is really focused on the domestic, because German government launched the largest assistance package in German history. So mostly this assistance go to SMEs and also to host on also to the health sectors. And we can see also in couple months back, also the German government tried to focus as well how to bring up the business activity on board again. And then next slide, I would like to mention about, I think, the economic recovery from German policy is about we cannot forget, of course, we cannot deny that I think Germans are really focused on during its presidency how to assist the economic recovery within the EU. So that's why also one priority of German in EU during the EU Council presidency. And then of course, from industrial trend, rethinking global values chain. This is something that currently we're working very hard. I know that our ambassador in Berlin, also our two consul general in Hamburg and Frankfurt, working for how to approach, how to convince German companies to relocate their companies from China or other countries to Indonesia. But hopefully, I think in the near future, we can see some lights about our progress, because according to the data from KPMG, there are around 52% of German companies in China demonstrate their intention to relocate their company in Southeast Asia. So on other next one, I think I would like to mention about this is the pillar of our bilateral cooperation between Indonesia and Germany about Jakarta Declaration. We cannot forget about this declaration in 2012. This is our blueprint how to bring the cooperation between two countries to advance economic growth. So this is very significant in these days, especially during the pandemic. If you've seen on this document, we can see, I think, the economic pillars, economic and development, including trade, investment and tourism, and also vocational training. And we can see also this the health cooperation. And if you've seen, I think, based on our data or progress, there's some element or sectors being already made a progress, but some of them we still need to figure out more. And I remember that yesterday, Ambassador Hafaz mentioned about the health cooperation. I know that we don't have such bilateral agreement or framework with Germany yet, but now it's in the making. So this is very important also for Indonesia to move forward with Germany on health cooperation. And then I think as we know that I think I would like to also to mention about the vocational education training, because this is very important. We can see Germany of our main partner in Europe, even in the world, to promote Indonesian vocational education. Germans has been involved in many projects in Indonesia on vocational education, vocational and educations. And then, of course, as well, I would like also to touch upon a little bit about the environment and renewable energy. We can see through German technology and also the science and innovation, we would like to bring more benefit to our how to help Indonesia to support to develop our renewable energy in the future. And then all this implementation in this declaration being overseen by bilateral steering committee, which is heading by a chair, I think, led by our Director General. In this part, I would like to discuss a little bit later about this one. So I think based on this part, I think I would just want to make it quick about, what's the low-hanging fruits that we can push forward this day in terms of bilateral cooperation that we need to strengthen with Germany, especially in economy, especially to recover our economy. First, about the health cooperation. This is very important. we already knew that Germany already support Indonesia under CEPI as one of founding member in CEPI, and then we hopefully, I think in the near future, the biopharma would become, I think, the partner for CEPI. And then currently, of course, I think on the bilateral scheme, we are in the making of a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding or Agreement with German government of Germany on public health, pharmaceutical and medical devices, among others. Why this is very important? For instance, we would like to what we could promote in terms of the cooperation pharmaceutical and medical devices, and also how to medical services, like to build a sister hospital. This is very important, taking into account the advance of a German's hospital in tackling the infectious disease or other public disease, and also about, I think, the Germans' support on our COVID-19 under CARES, COVID-19 Active Response Anti-Expenditure Support Programs, around 250 million through ADB. And then the second pillar I would like to underline about Hannover Messe. This would be an important year for us in the year to 2020, because it will be a good showcase for Indonesian to what we call it to strengthen our to promote industry to industry between two countries. So this is our show next year. Hopefully we can promote our 5 sectors, and this also the next one about relocating companies, as I mentioned before, is very important. That's German companies could relocate their companies, or maybe to expand the investment in Indonesia, because we can see so far, I think, maybe we serve like lack of progress compared to Vietnam or other countries in ASEAN. And then the other one about green economy as one of the what we call it a strategic or priority of German presidency in Europe. This is very important as well. Nowadays, we try to facilitate some German companies in energy sector to help Indonesian on renewable energy. And the last and the next one, I think I would like to mention about the tourism. This is very important, as German, as we know, the Germans tourism is becoming like, it's the good repeater. They are really good contributor to our tourism industry, especially to national revenue. So in this part, we would like to move forward to how to link, to build the connectivity by establishing direct flight from Jakarta to Frankfurt, for instance. So this is also on the making, and under coordination with other agencies in Indonesia and Germany. And this one, I think that this scheme about the travel corridor arrangement, we are not there yet, but of course, this is under becoming like burning discussion within our ministry with other ministry. So how can also to consider travel corridor arrangement with other countries, including Germany. So this is very important, since I think our consulate or our embassy in Berlin currently just did some survey, almost like maybe 70 out of 100 Germany, they would like to travel to Indonesia, especially Bali, of course. So this is very opportunity for us. And then the other one I would like to mention about the EU CEPA. This is also very important, and this is very timely to discuss now during the pandemic. And then I just want to mention for the next slide, I think just the most important thing. Padani, can you move to the next slide? This is about like what's our strategy for all those things. First, I think I would like to mention about strategy, strengthening partnership. How Indonesia and Germany can build strategic forum. Under this part, I would like to highlight about the importance of the ministerial level, because so far we don't have such ministerial level, not only for between our ministry, but of course involving other ministries. This is very important. And the second one also about the plan of action for sectoral cooperation. We would like to bring, I think, under the Jakarta Declaration, every sector, any stakeholders to set or to prepare the plan of action. This is very important to measure how far we can go, and then the achievement, and also whether we achieve the target or not. And then part of this as well, I think currently Indonesia and Germany propose to establish the what we call it bilateral economic partnership mechanism, how to bring all stakeholders in big table to discuss how to how to strengthen or to bring the economic cooperation to be more effective or to be more beneficial for us, for all stakeholders. And the other one also, I need to underline, I think, the importance of the continuous promotion of Indonesia through our embassy and consulate general in Germany. If I discuss with Ambassador Sof and Sof or maybe other colleague in Germany, they always mention Indonesia is not in the radar of German people because not really well known for many German people, most German. And then the last one I just want to mention about like 2022 would be 10th anniversary of Jakarta Declaration. Is this document still relevant with for our bilateral cooperation? Do we need to revise or renew this declaration? This is also one of homework that KMLU with other ministries working at the moment. I think that's all from my side, Ibu Vivi. I think hopefully these presentations bring more intriguing discussion later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Hendra, for the presentation, and we truly appreciate your updates on the different issues that both Germany and Indonesia are doing within the context of economic recovery. I mean, covering a broad range of issues from health cooperation, green economy, tourism, and I think some of these points might not be very familiar to a lot of the participants here. So thank you so much for the update. For the second speaker, we have my CSIS colleague, Dr. Yose Rizal Damuri. Yose now is the head of the economics department of CSIS, and he's actually done quite a lot of work regarding economic recoveries since the start of the pandemic. So Yose, you have the script.
Thank you very much, Vivi. Thank you also to CSIS and also Konrad Adenauer Stiftung that already give me a chance to share my my thought and my opinion regarding one aspect that I deem very important in economic recovery during the COVID-19, which is international economic cooperation. If I may, I would like to look at it from a more general perspective. Maybe not really in the bilateral terms between Indonesia and Germany, but later on I will also touch upon the issue that perhaps Indonesia and Germany can also bring towards greater and stronger international economic cooperations. Allow me to share my screen here. I hope you already seen my presentation. This is just a small presentations, actually, very short presentations that just help me to clarify several points that I like to raise. Maybe I should open up my presentations, my talk here by reminding you again that the global economy has been and is deteriorating, perhaps also for sometimes in the future. The things is, it's because the containment activities that during to face the COVID-19 or to counter the COVID-19 spread, the many businesses and economic activities have come to a halt, a stop. And it already creates a lot of massive jobs and also reduce purchasing power in the economy. So we can see that the many economic sectors actually get hit severely due to falling demands. In particular, those less necessity, more durable and more leisure-related sectors, including also tourism that that Pak Hendra also already mentioned several times in his presentations. The worst thing is that the current global economic crisis is still on. We still don't have any clear perspective or clear perspective until when the economic crisis will go on. Unlike the previous crisis in 2008 or in 1998, we after the crisis, after the economic got hit by the crisis, then we normally see the recovery underway. But with the current crisis, the uncertainty is still very high. That's why, for example, many international organizations has changed their prediction several times, even during the last 7 months. For example, the OECD, this is a very extreme case, revised the prediction from 2.4, the economic growth put 2.4% into 2020 in this outlook to minus 7.6 because of this uncertainty. And then OECD also is still also changing their predictions as with others. With other international organizations. So we still now look at the deteriorating of global economy, including also in Germany and also in Indonesia. But not only the crisis is not only about the hit the domestic economy. The pandemic also put connectivity and international economic relations into a stop. Because of the containment measures, many countries has a swift move to reduce international connectivity, international economic relations. So that we've seen also it's not only local or domestic social distancing that has been applied, but also activities at global level, including also travel, for example. Many countries just close their border for any travel. But not only for the human travel, but also for the goods travel. That the one that we always see as an in international trade. International trade also came into half for several months, and also financial activity as well, international financial activities. Even during there have been some attempts to also restrict digital and data flow, although it didn't really come up into realization. Luckily, it may not be desirable to stop the connectivity or to reduce connectivity, but it is necessary, basically, to contain the COVID-19 spread. But of course, we still have the consequences. The consequences on putting this connectivity, international connectivity, into a half comes in a range of consequences, from the foregone tourism revenue, declining remittance, supply chain disruptions, even also commodity price decline and weakening investment, including also the increasing risk of financial disruptions in terms of the depreciation and capital outflow. We are quite lucky, actually, at the moment. The economic crisis remains to be isolated or to have less effect to the financial sector. And we have seen the financial sector is basically still under control. But if the global crisis, the economic crisis, is going too long, then the financial sectors would also be disrupted very significantly. There will be a lot of risk, downside risk on that aspect. That's why actually we need more international cooperations, because when the crisis hit productivity and purchasing power, the only instruments in the economy is fiscal policy and also to some extent monetary policy. That means governments becomes the last spender, the only spender in the economy that can keep the economy to move and to the economic machinery to move. But fiscal policy has a very significant fiscal and monetary policy, basically has very significant international spillover. That's why we need to have international cooperation. That's what we already heard since the beginnings of the crisis. I also have written several articles actually on the necessity of having a fiscal policy coordination at the global level or at least at regional level to support for economic recovery. The second thing is also because of the pause of international connectivity. Then we need to revitalize international connectivity. We need to revitalize travel. We need to revitalize trade. We need to revitalize international financial sector connectivity. And in order to do that, we need to have stronger international economic cooperation. And I believe many papers have been written, many webinars, many seminars, and also many forums has also already provide a lot of many suggestions or for the importance of international economic cooperation. Some proposed cooperations might be things like here in the immediate and early recovery, we need some kind of supporting fund for health, keeping trade in medical equipment and supplies, also fiscal coordinations, as I mentioned before, including also perhaps international funds for assistance. On the recovery and new normal period or post-COVID periods, we need to have more efforts to keep the cross-border data flow and transactions, also to keep the protectionism at bay, yeah, and also to perhaps also to support to revitalize multilateral trading systems. Yeah, those kind of proposals have been around for quite a while, for 5 or 6 months so far, but unfortunately, we haven't really seen a lot of international economic cooperations, especially on the crucial issues in the for the immediate and economic recovery. Like for example, on the fiscal coordination, we always I think many scholars and also many policymakers put a lot of hope to the G20 countries and to the G20 forum to provide such policy coordination, fiscal policy coordination, because fiscal and monetary policy, as I mentioned before, has significant international spillover. So we need to have some kind of policy coordination in order to reduce the spillover and externalities. That's what the G20 did actually during the 2008 economic crisis. They put also they also committed 2% of their GDP as the assistance, fiscal assistance that allow the economy to recover in a faster way. Currently, there is no such policy coordination. G20 also has agreed on temporary debt relief for low-income countries. It's 11.5 billion US dollar. Seems to be a lot of money, but compared to 9 trillion fiscal response of G20 member, the number is just minuscule. And so far, only about a half of that amount that have been used. So we have seen here that international economic cooperations, although have been called several times, have been discussed a lot. In reality, we still have difficulties in realizing that, especially in the fiscal cooperations. Although, as you can see, that the many countries, this is the G20 countries case, where most of the members, most of G20 members actually put a lot of money into their economy, inject a lot of money to their economy, including also Indonesia and also Germany. Germany in total have like around 35% of their GDP, although the spending and revenue measures is only around 4%. Indonesia also in total, we do have around 4% of our spending of fiscal of our GDP as a spending and revenue measures from the government. But in Indonesian case, the Indonesian case, perhaps we can in the let me put it this way. For Indonesian case, many actually thought that the number or the magnitude of fiscal policy response in Indonesia seems to be too low in order to make it more to make it significant, to push the economy push the economics to go on and to push for the recovery, because we only have like around 50 billion or less than 40 billion US dollar to be put into the economy, compared to other countries that provide trillions of US dollar or at least hundreds of US dollar, and it is only like around 4% of Indonesia's GDP. But unfortunately, although it is still small, the disbursement is also very slow. So we cannot see that in this our fiscal policy can be relied to push for the economic recovery. The number here, 7%, 38%, 11% is the realizations of fiscal policy in Indonesia until last August. Yeah. And you can see in total it is only like around 30% of the fiscal budget of the budget that have been disbursed to push for the or to support the economy. So we do have the problems here in the fiscal policy side. So after looking at a bit on the Indonesian case, I would also would like to bring back the discussions to the regional or to the international level again, to the general level again, and then to see what are the challenges of what are the challenges that the international economic cooperations has faced, that make the cooperations hasn't really been materialized at the moment, at least in the economic area. I believe there are several factors here. I think one of the most important is the geopolitical situations, which is the U.S. and China tensions that basically already put hindrance toward all efforts for the multilateral or even regional economic cooperations. The other things that perhaps also need to be mentioned is the domestic and national interest. It is quite clear here for today's crisis that domestic political and economic interests already led to inward-looking and protectionist attitude. Many countries actually put a lot of trade barriers during the earlier months of the COVID pandemic, including also to those stuff needed for the health and medical equipment, including also on the food supplies, food trade in food products. Another thing that that perhaps need to be mentioned is also lack of trust between neighboring countries. I think yesterday discussions also put these aspects and then discuss this aspect a lot on how this lack of trust also already becomes a challenge for greater economic cooperations. Another thing that also come up, in my opinion, is that insufficient mechanisms. There are lack of mechanism to carry out the commitments and slow response of international organizations. Although G20 is basically a powerful forum, it doesn't really have a mechanism to carry out the commitments, and it depends on the international organizations. But many international organizations are also not really equipped to deal with the current situations, such as IMF or the World Bank do not really have experience to deal with the current situations. So they still also need to take some time to learn on how to deal and to effectively move to support for the recovery. So what to do if that kind of things happen? In my opinion, there are a lot of there are several things that perhaps we need to pursue, or we need to look at even in a more detail. The first one is my opinions is that first we need to build trust, and build the trust can be built by looking at the by focusing the international the benefit of international cooperation for individual countries. Because currently we always say that the international cooperation is needed for the global economic recovery. But what in it for the individual countries? We need to highlight the benefits that that international economic cooperation can bring to those individual countries, instead of only looking at the global level. Leadership and champions, of course, matters, and we also need to start from the common interest. And I think the last aspect that I need to focus, I need to highlight here is that perhaps it is better for international forum to focus on priority areas which related to connectivity. As I mentioned before, there are two aspects that need to be to have the international cooperation. The first one is fiscal policy coordination. The other one is revitalizing connectivity. So international fiscal policy coordinations might be important, but it is very difficult. And even after 7 months, 8 months, we still don't see an attempt to have greater fiscal policy coordination. So why not put our efforts to support for connectivity? And I think Pak Hendra also already mentions a lot about many measures that can provide or can support the connectivity, in revitalizing connectivity, such as safe and efficient travel arrangement, not only for tourists actually, but also for workers, because the current pandemic also already affect a lot on the professionals and workers. Also, in terms of trade, we also need to keep the protectionisms at the low level. by promoting multilateral and regional trade orders. Hopefully, the WTO would also be can play greater roles by having the WTO reforms to be pushed. Yeah. In the longer terms, I forgot to put it here. We also need to have more what you call this, clear regulations, and also a rule of the games for digital economy and digital activities. As we have seen, the current crisis actually already pushed the digital activities significantly. Some even mentions about 5 years advance, 5 years advance of the digital activities. So we think that big jumps need to be regulated, or need to be harmonized. Not really regulating it in terms of restricting it, but we need to come up with an international consensus on how to deal with with digital activities, including also in the digital economy, or other applications in the society. Yeah. So those things focusing on connectivity might be a good those might need to be pursued by countries in order to support for the economic recovery, and also to face the post-COVID-19 economic orders. And here, Indonesia and Germany can play a great role in order to do that. Yeah. For example, even in the fiscal policy space, Indonesia and Germany still can learn each other, even without having a multilateral or global fiscal policy coordinations. Both those two countries can learn to each other. As I mentioned before, Indonesia has been having problems in disbursement of the fiscal of the budget, the sporting budget. So perhaps we can also learn how Germany can deal with the fiscal policy during the economic recovery and also economic crisis. Both countries still can push for greater cooperation in G20, despite the difficulties of persuading the US to agree to a common agenda. Still, Germany and Indonesia as members of G20 should play a greater role to push for the common agenda. And then also, as I mentioned before, multilateral trading system is still very important. So taking more efforts to strengthening multilateral trading systems, either through WTO or G20, can be should also be in an agenda, or foreign policy agenda of those two countries. And more specifically, Indonesia and Germany can push forward Indonesia-EU CEPA negotiation to facilitate economic relations, including also in supporting Indonesia's aspiration to gain benefits from the rearrangement of global value chain that we also already talked a lot in Indonesia so far. I think I will stop there, Fifi, and hope to continue in the discussions after this.
Thank you so much, Yose, for the presentation. I think it's a great concern when we hear that there's acknowledgement that international cooperation is needed in economic recoveries, and there are various proposals for cooperation, as mentioned by Yose. But at the same time, we see that the cooperation is still limited. And then there are a number of serious challenges, as Yose has elaborated. And I think there will be some questions regarding, some strategies to try to tackle some of these challenges as well. So we move on to the next speaker, but before that, can I just remind all the participants that if you have any questions to any of the panelists, you can post your question if you're joining us in Zoom. You can use the Q&A function in the Zoom platform. If you are joining us through YouTube, you can type down your question at the comment section, and then my colleagues will convey the questions to me. You can start posing the questions now as we move on to our third speaker, who is Dr. Patrick Ziegenhain, who is currently an associate professor at the Department of International Relations at Presiden University here in Indonesia. Previously, he has held various visiting professor positions in Indonesia and Malaysia, and also in Germany. His main areas of research are economic, political, and social developments in Southeast Asia and Europe. So Dr. Ziegenhain, you have the screen now.
Yeah, thank you very much. And good afternoon to everybody. Selamat sore semuanya. My name is Patrick Ziegenhain, and it's a great pleasure to be here in this discussion. Thank you very much for Konrad Adenauer Stiftung and CSIS for inviting me to this debate. Let me start with my presentation. One moment, share screen. Share. Full screen. Okay. Full screen, not yet. So now everybody can see? Yeah, hopefully, good. So that's my presentation. I will start also with a short overview of the world recovery, economic recovery worldwide, and then come to some points regarding Germany. How has Germany reacted? What kind of recipes Germany has used to counter the economic crisis? And then give some lessons learned, and before I come to the cooperation possibilities between Indonesia and Germany. First of all, I got the new OECD outlook, which was just published in September 2020. And here we have the revised economic data and recovery possibilities of the G20 countries. And we see that Germany has predicted to be minus 5.4% in 2020, and but then it seems to recover by 4.6%, and so on. Indonesia, here we have Indonesia, and here the other countries, but we see that Indonesia and Germany are by far not the most affected by the global economic crisis. Of course, it's not, as already Yose mentioned, it's not so easy to predict when and how economic recovery will take place. This has to do with how the pandemic evolves in the future. It has also to do how long there will be shutdowns and other protection measures which hinder mobility between the countries and hinder trade and free exchange of goods, services, and people, but also has to do with the impact of the fiscal and monetary policy measures which have been applied by regional and organizations such as the European Central Bank, but also by national banks. Of course, there's also it's very clear that there will be more uncertainty in the time to come until the end of this year, probably and beginning of next year. Nobody exactly know what the future will be. But here are some scenarios which are also from this OECD economic outlook from September 2020. He said the worst is already over. We are here, but then it can be that there is a long continuing let's say rather stagnant development, or that there is a slow decline, a slow increase, or that it can be easily recovered. That's not clear, and even OECD cannot predict the future. What is clear here is on the left side, the virus must be put aside so that the world economy can keep on running. Okay, now let's come to Europe. I mean, as you may have heard, there's a sort of second wave in Europe of the COVID, different to Indonesia, where there's a sort of let's say continuous development, a continuous increase. Europe has witnessed in March, April, a high number of cases, but then due to the reactions, the lockdowns, this went down, but now the cases are increasing, not so much in Germany, but more in Spain, France, and UK, other countries of Europe. But this second wave seems to be not as bad as the first. You can see here the number of confirmed deaths per week caused by the pandemic. And then we see the number was very high in March, April, May, when in Indonesia it's just started. Well, already a lot of people dying in Europe, but now, despite a lot of infections in Europe at the moment, there is not so much death. And you see also the number of elderly people, 65 plus, was the biggest part of the people confirmed death of the COVID virus. So this is, I think, a bit different statistics about the development of the COVID pandemic in Europe than we have it in Indonesia. So economic recovery in Germany. In July, there were there were some news from media, which I showed in 6th of July. German recovery from COVID-19 will be slow and painful. Data shows this, what Reuters Business News. But nowadays, due to the decline of, let's say, COVID, not cases, deaths, and also the, let's say, measures that the restrictions were lifted. So there's more mobility in Germany now. The German government stated that there will be a V-shaped economy, meaning a rapid decline, but also rapid recovery. And on 1st of September, the German Minister of Finance, Peter Altmaier, he already, you see what he's holding in the hand at his press conference in Berlin. He shows that the economy of Germany will decline sharply, but then recover as well. But of course, it will take time. He said the German economy will shrink 5% this year, but the return to the pre-pandemic levels will be already reached in 2020. So there will be easy recovery. But of course, how did this come? There are some points which have already been mentioned by my previous speaker colleagues. Of course, it's public spending and monetary policy. Public spending, meaning the state has to put a lot of money to reduce the effects of the economic decline. Germany did it. Germany was ready to make new debts. Here we can see also this one. This is in German language, everything, meaning the German, let's say, healthcare package. Yeah, meaning the aid package for economy is top in Europe. And that's true. In Italy also has a lot. But if you see compared to other countries, Germany has really spent a lot of money and was also ready to increase its debts. You know, this is the debts of Germany in percentage of the GDP. It was in 2010, 82.4. And then with a lot of austerity measures, Germany reduced the state debts to 59.8% in 2019. So you're saving a lot of money of state debts. But then into 2020, this will increase to the same value as in 2010 within 1 year as an effect of the COVID pandemic. I mean, Indonesia is 40% of the debts to GDP. It's far lower than the German debts. Yeah, but okay, but you can see here 82%. That's a huge number compared to the previous year. So Germany is ready to make new debts, but it also ready to restructuring of the economy. It's using the subsidies not for all sectors of the economy, but particularly for those who are predicted to have an effect on the economy, of the future economy. For example, the car industry, which is one of the biggest German industries, did not get any subsidies, but only other, let's say, companies like startups in the electronic sector or digital trade and so on. This one were supported, but also green companies. And as you know, the monetary policy is not so much German thing. It's more already at a European Central Bank. The European Central Bank kept the interest rates very low so that there is even sometimes negative interest rates. So that's really not worth to save the money, but it must be spent. And that's very necessary. Okay, now I come to some German specific, let's say, economic recovery measures, which I don't know, I cannot say that Indonesia has to follow them, but I think it's just an idea, maybe food for thought, what could be done here in Germany. They had a so-called Corona Soforthilfe program. The meaning is that businesses, small and medium enterprises with up to 10 employees got up to 15,000 euro for a period of 6 months. So that's very unbureaucratic help for small and medium enterprises. Also, there's the sort of state bank, Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau. They give aids for companies, loans for companies, meaning for those in need with very, let's say, low guarantees. Another very specific thing which was Germany already applied in 2008, 2009, it's the so-called Kurzarbeitergeld, which means short work money. The companies agreed to refrain from laying off any employees, meaning no worker was fired, even if the company got into trouble, but the government guaranteed that they get 84% of the income, meaning these are people not working full-time anymore, but they got the support from the German federal government. And this was extended until December 21. So that's really a long time payment for, it's a moment that I think it's 8 to 9 million people who are working on short work money. Another thing is also the so-called COVID-19 Abmilderungsgesetz, which was the name of for companies. They are in trouble because of the COVID pandemic. They are not to how to say, they are allowed to suspend the bankruptcy. They can still receive state support and don't have to file bankruptcy, as this was to avoid that many companies collapsing. Another thing where that companies do not have to pay health insurance or tax payments now, but they can delay them or defer them for a later date. This is specific German health programs, which were cost a lot of let's say, how to say, state expenditures. Germany made a lot of debts, as I showed, but I think this was a lesson which is valuable. So what kind of lessons can we learn? One is to tighten the fiscal, not to tighten the fiscal policy too quickly, meaning the aid program should be continuous in order to guarantee that economy and will not break down, that there will be less bankruptcy, and that unemployment should not rise faster. Also, as Germany had done, I think the reboot or the recovery of the economy should be focused on generating investment for a small and medium-sized company, but also focusing on green infrastructure, but also a more digitalized economy. That's the future trends. And I think Yose also already mentioned this, but I think here the restructuring could be done in such a way. Also, I think lockdowns should be avoided as much as possible, as long as public health is not in danger, because lockdowns are very, how to say, have a very negative effect for economy. And I think more connectivity is needed for increasing connectivity. More connectivity, also that what Yose already mentioned before. Also, unemployment, it's important to keep people in work, even with government subsidies, as the German Kurzarbeitergeld here. Yeah, so you see, that's why it's other. In Indonesia, for example, where in developing countries where millions of informal workers, this for them, it's very hard. So it's better to keep them in economy before they're becoming unemployed. So now let me come to some general cooperation possibilities. I think also that the COVID-19 pandemic should be, let's say, pushed all the countries in the world to more international cooperation and multilateralism instead of economic nationalism, isolationism, protectionism. But as we see, as Yose also mentioned, this is easily said, but not so not so easily to implement. That's why Germany and Indonesia should, develop their relations. They, for example, could share the knowledge about coronavirus, healthcare, and vaccination. I think that would be very beneficial. We also heard that Hendra from Kemlo, he already mentioned several initiatives which are ongoing. Also, I think that, but I think most important is the trade, an increase more trade between Indonesia and Germany. At the moment, Indonesia, maybe I heard the data from Hendra, but it's far below the possibilities. Indonesia is, for example, the German and Malaysian trade is 3 times as big as the German-Indonesian trade, and Malaysia is a quite small country compared to the economic powerhouse of Indonesia. So there's a lot of potential for increased trade between those 2 countries. And as you know, trade policy in Europe, it's not Germany alone who does it, it's the European Union, because they making the the tariffs and trades and the terms of trade with the other countries. And here I think the ASEAN-EU free trade treatment must be pursued in a more comprehensive way as it is right now. I know the palm oil issue is blocking this since many years, but I think there should be also a solution that both sides understand each other better why the reasons for this conflict. Okay, then I think also in Indonesia has to do some homework, as President Jokowi already announced. There is, I don't say, okay, I don't want to comment on the omnibus law in all details, but I think in general, the reduction of trade barriers and investment hindrances must be tackled by the Indonesian government. I think the government is ready for this, but I think among the general public, among the students, among the non-academic experts, there is still a lot of resentment against further trade. Just a personal experience when last week I had some essays from my students, all talked about, I asked them to write about globalization. All of them thought it's very dangerous, globalization. Indonesia needs to close its borders, stop imports, and so on, and better do not trade, but better have to stand on their own feet. And for me, that's still a mindset which is very prevalent in Indonesian society. It's not enough if President Jokowi will reduce the trade barriers, but it's also a bit of change of mindset that international cooperation will also benefit. And this in the big paper is also, of course, the ASEAN-EU strategic partnership, which could be filled more with contents, and this would really help to increase trade and exchange between Indonesia and Germany, but also in the bigger framework of ASEAN and EU. Okay, that was my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Ziegenhain. There are, so now we a few interesting things I think that you mentioned in your presentation, especially models for economic recovery in Germany. You mentioned the aid packages, the loans, and then the short work money. That's the one you mentioned. So I think those are some things that might not be too familiar with some of us here in Indonesia, and I think that it's always interesting to learn about those. Okay, so now we come to the discussion session. So I encourage the participants to ask your questions, as I said, using the Q&A function in Zoom. There are already a couple of questions. I'll start with the first one. I think both Pak Hendra and Yose mentioned about the Indonesia-EU CEPA negotiation, and I think both of you have highlighted the importance of the Indonesia-EU CEPA. So I don't know, maybe both of you can highlight some of the updates. Maybe, I don't know if Hendra can give us insights on the updates on the ongoing negotiation, and maybe then Yose can also highlight about the importance of this CEPA actually to us in Indonesia. And I don't know, maybe then Mr. Ziegenhain can offer some insights on how does this agreement seen from the German point of view? Is it something that's important? Is it something that they think that should be pursued further? Perhaps I'll start with Pak Hendra, please.
Thank you, Bu Vivi. Thank you very much about the questions. I know that this Egypt are very important. I think all business people, both from Indonesia and Germany and entire European Union member states, they're looking forward about these negotiations. And during my discussion with Connie, with also German business people, they're not really patient to that EU CEPA can be resumed. And I think several points that I think to be highlighted, I think about this EU CEPA in this regard, of course, about investment protection, because I think from our discussion, the German company would like to have one instrument concerning the investment cooperation, especially on EU CEPA. We have investment chapter. Under this what we call it document, that EU members that are not allowed to have the bilateral investment treaty with other countries until we have we call it adopted the EU CEPA. And the second one I would like to mention about that from trade perspective, as Pak Jose mentioned also, and also Pak Dr. Philip regarding the trade. I think I understand, because the main reason to put EU CEPA as our priority today is about how to bring more Indonesian product to Germany, because I know that Germany is a very strategic hub for Indonesian products for Central Europe. And if you could see, I know that so far, I think we're still under negotiations, and the negotiations being suspended due to the pandemic. But of course, both delegations are conducted we call it intersessional discussion through virtual, and to further discuss about some pending issues, especially on the I know that there's trade and sustainable development, and also I think for the trade in goods. So this is very, but I just want to mention one thing, that I think since the EU CEPA, one of the priority of the government, especially it's already mandated by the president of the priority this year. So I think all the teams consist of the ministry and also the Kemlu and Trade Ministry. We are on board to expedite the process. But again, of course, it takes time, and it's like other negotiations. There are some pro cons that we need to further discuss, and we in this part, I think I just want to mention. Hopefully, then we can resume this negotiation very soon. So, like other CEPA, like EU CEPA, EFTA CEPA, and Australian CEPA, we can Indonesia and EU can have such instrument. I think that's all from that I can mention about the EU CEPA. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hendra. I think your last point, I think that's also one of the challenges presented by the pandemic, that it's making it harder for negotiations to actually proceed in a regular manner, because now you have the choice to either do it virtually or then have to postpone the negotiations. So I think that's also one challenge that we have to put into account. Yose, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Vivi. The Indonesia EU CEPA is very important. First, to Indonesia, especially from the perspective of Indonesia, is that first is it would be a platform that Indonesia can use to have bigger part in the European market, especially for trade in goods and also trade in services. Although Indonesia is active in pursuing for new and non-traditional market, the traditional market need to be kept, and one way to do that is that with this free trade agreements with the European Union, because currently, for example, just to quote one example, currently around 45% of Indonesia's export to EU is fall under the so-called GSP category, which means receive a lower tariff than the usual import, EU import. But those preference, the GSP preference, will be gone soon, because Indonesia currently is already the upper middle income countries. Perhaps within several years ahead, Indonesia would no longer can enjoy that kind of benefit. In order to secure the market, Indonesia need to have this kind of CEPA and FTA. But that's not the whole story. I think the CEPA is also more important for Indonesia to become an integral part of European global value chain, EU's global value chain. Currently, European companies operating in Indonesia mostly serve the local and the domestic market. But with the stronger relations, perhaps Indonesia can become a hub, a new hub for European multinational corporations and European global value chains in this region, serving not only Indonesian market but also ASEAN countries, ASEAN market, or even Australian market, or even South Asian market. And with the spirit of revitalizing and diversification of global value chains during as a consequences of the COVID pandemic, the current COVID pandemic, then EU CEPA will also support a lot on making these aspirations to be materialized in the future.
Yeah. And
okay.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead, Pak Hendra.
Yeah. Now, if I could add, I think that's why I think we fully seek German support. I think how to make the political intervention in Brussels to expedite the process, and I think the moment we currently doing that. So during the German presidency, it's very important the role of German to as well to what we call it, to bring EU CEPA move forward, especially on the sensitive issues. Thank you.
Yeah. If I may add also, Fifi, it is very unfortunate that after 4 years, the negotiations is still very slow. Yeah, but it's quite understandable, because we deal with although EU is a single entity, but it consists of 28 countries with 28 economies. So perhaps I strongly agree with Pak Hendra that Germany's positions would be good. Germany is really in good position to push forward for this CEPA, especially from the EU side, while also Indonesia would take more active and more initiative in the negotiations.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Hendra and Yose. Dr. Ziegenhain, over to you.
Yeah, a lot of important points have already been mentioned. I just want to add, I think the European Commission, which is leading the trade negotiation, is not like there are 28 governments talking, but it's already coherent, yeah, meaning that it's they are pursuing their own policy, trade policy. They are not like their representative. I don't know if you imagine this, but it's the European Commission who's leading the trade negotiation, I think. And Germany, of course, who has now the presidency in the Council, I think they are pushing towards this free trade agreement forwards. It's in the national interest of Germany as an export nation to increase trade. And I think it's a win-win situation. The EU will benefit as well as Indonesia if there would be more trade between the two sides. And I hope also that the Indonesian side understands that opening their borders would not be negative for the local, for the domestic products. As I hear a lot of academic experts, also politicians in the DPR and some people from the ministry, they are fear if Indonesia, opens the border for European products, that there will be a negative impact for the Indonesian economy. But I don't think so. I think they are complementary products which are imported in exports, and they are not competitive. That's what my perspective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I'll move on to the second question. And I think this question is addressed to Yose, I think. Dr. Ziegenhain mentioned earlier about one of the schemes that it's being done in Germany, which is the Kurzarbeitergeld, the short work money package, basically. There is a question from one of the participants saying that, is this something that, that can be practiced in Indonesia as well, especially looking at the restrictions regarding working hours and everything due to the PSBB, for example, in Jakarta. Is this something that can be considered in Indonesia as well?
Yes, one of the concerns during the crisis is that actually we have new poor in the society, and it is still not recorded. Basically, we don't have data on them. Those people who live, who normally can be classified as a middle income and get a good job, now are losing the jobs and then need to get the assistance. I'm not really sure about the what's the name of the Kurzarbeit, yeah. But I think and I'm not, also not really sure whether it can be applied in Indonesia or not. But currently, Indonesian governments has used also the how do you call this in English? It's called BPJS, Ketenagakerjaan, employment social safety net, yeah, employment social safety net to provide some support to the workers here. I think perhaps it's similar, but I don't know where. Maybe Dr. Ziegenhain can explain more about it. But one thing that Indonesia can do actually, or the government of Indonesia can do actually also to provide programs, rehiring program. So it's perhaps it's a little bit different than the program in Germany, but this one actually this kind of rehiring program actually provide support to the business that will hire in order to hire back their employees. So they get like the incentive, they got funding, they got support, perhaps also they got assistance if they rehire their employee back when they come into the operation. This kind of program actually has been used before in the previous crisis, but I don't know why until now the government of Indonesia hasn't really been considering, has not considered this kind of programs to provide support, especially in the rehiring employees.
Okay, thank you, Yose. Dr. Ziegenhain, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I would like to add that I think Germany was in 2008, 2009 during the financial crisis. They introduced this program and proved to be quite effective because also these debts of the banking crisis 2008, 2009 were not so long term, yeah. But now I think also some negative effects become visible because if you pay this for 1 year, 1.5 years, meaning that's also could be how to say it's quite costly, yeah. And also it's a benefit, as Yose already said, for those who have a, let's say, middle class job, yeah, who in the formal sector who have a good job and they are benefiting from that. I think Indonesia, it's a bit difficult to apply because so many people are in the informal sector. I think 70% or so of the Indonesian workforce has not a formal contract, and for them such a program would not be helpful because yeah, you know, in the informal sector I think Indonesia has to find other welfare state measures to particularly find solutions for those people which are affected by COVID in such a sense that they are falling into poverty. And that's more a development of a welfare state. Okay, the welfare state, Indonesia is on the way of creating this, but I think there should be some country-specific approaches, and it cannot be adopted just one-to-one, these so-called Kurzarbeitergeld to Indonesia, yeah, because there are different conditions. But I think it's, as an academic model, it's quite interesting to think about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ziegenhain. I'll move on to the next question, and I think this should be best addressed to Pak Hendra, perhaps. Yeah. There's a question regarding complementarities between Germany and Indonesia. And I think in your presentation, you mentioned already a number of strategic approach that you know, Indonesia is trying to do in terms of economic recovery, including in terms of relations with other countries. But I think that if I understand the question correctly, but what about you know, looking at short-term solution? I mean, strategic approach is looking at the middle and even long-term solution to the issue. But what about short-term solution? Are there specific sectors that perhaps Indonesia can try to develop together with countries like Germany, for example? Please, Pak Hendra.
Thank you. Yeah, very good questions. So that's why I think once I put everything on the basket, of course, I think the most important thing, of course, and this is kind of like menu. So which one is really easy? Because I refer to Pak Jose mentioned, I think during this pandemic, what we need to know is, what the most reliable or eligible cooperation that we can explore between two countries. So I just want to pinpoint the first of all sector. First, about the health cooperation. This is very important element. Why? Because we already have such embryo on this, and I think there is also some what we call demand driven from the private sectors, because German companies also has been involved in Indonesian pharmaceutical industry, and now I think we also the interest from our pharmaceutical industry in Indonesia to explore their market in Indonesia. So I think this is one thing. The second one's about this what we call it, this human resources. I know that currently Indonesia and Germany has discussed, or maybe has discussed about, I think how to send some our to bring some Indonesian professional workers on health industries to Germany. So this is also one area that we need to promote this day. And I think we almost there. And I think now between Indonesian institution and German institution already discussed quite intense, and I think we almost reached an agreement. So hopefully by next year we can see that. And the other thing I think about the trade, I think this is very important nowadays. I think despite we don't have we are not able to participate, or maybe to bring our promotion to Germany. But of course, we already we need to create a digital platform how to promote Indonesian product to Germany. So I believe that I think our trade attaché, our ITPC in Hamburg, that they're working on it, and also our embassy and consulate general, they really now they're really preparing this concept, and with assistance from the Ministry of Trade and also Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So and then the other low-hanging fruits, I think investment. This is very, for me, in my experience, when I discuss with some German companies, or maybe to bring them to Indonesia, I know that there's some difficulties, because they always see the big picture of Indonesia, what we call it, of Indonesia situation. Let's say in terms of the red tape, or maybe the many obstacles. But logically, I'm just saying like this: why are the countries in Europe, they can expand their investment in Indonesia? Why, like UK or Belgium or Netherlands, we still receive some pledging from them, I think, these days during this pandemic, to expand their investment in Indonesia, business in Asia. And we are really looking forward from the German companies to do that. And so far, I think, according to my knowledge, I haven't seen it yet, but I think this is something that we are working now as well. So with the assistance from our ambassador and also our colleague at the Consulate General now. And of course, the role of chambers of commerce, and of course, Indonesia diaspora is very important as well. This is one important element we cannot ignore, because when I discuss with my colleague in Frankfurt and Hamburg, because there's so many Indonesian diaspora who nowadays become an entrepreneur. So I think this is one strategy that we need to bring up to bridge our economic cooperations during this pandemic. I think that's my point.
Thank you, Pak Hendra. I'll go back to Dr. Ziegenhain. There's a question asking that, in Indonesia, the informal sector is currently in the vulnerable position due to a lot of uncertainties in the era of pandemic. In Germany, you know, what would be categorized as the vulnerable sectors, which is, you know, more or less this in the same vulnerable position, having difficulties in getting out or recovering from the economic problems?
Yeah, of course, Germany is a completely different social structure and different also economic welfare in general. Oh, but of course, even in a relatively rich society as in Germany, there are poor people. Yeah, I mean, they are relatively poor, but Germany has applied a complete welfare state covering everybody, meaning there is a defined minimum standard of living which the Constitutional Court in Germany has defined. It's plus everybody who is in need will get an apartment and also electricity, water in that apartment, plus some €100 as a money for surviving. This is welfare state, and this is, yeah, you can survive. It's not very nice because the cost of living in Europe, in Germany, are quite high, but at least you have enough food and drink, and then you can apply for getting part of the formal sector. There is very little informal sector. Actually, it's mostly, okay, there are self-employed people and there are people who have official contract. But the other thing that you work and don't have a contract is it's a very small sector, and mostly it's illegal, yeah, because you also have to pay taxes if you work and so on, yeah. So that's why the informal sector in Germany is quite low. And those people who are poor, who are in need, they are helped by the welfare state. That's the German system, which costs a lot of money, by the way. Yeah? I mean, we also have to see that about 40% of the German budget goes into the welfare state, meaning that's a lot of money which the taxpayers have to pay to support those in need in Germany.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ziegenhain. Next, I think I have a question for back to Yose again. Yose, you mentioned in your presentation about, you know, despite the effort for international cooperation in fiscal relief, it has not worked so far. You did mention some challenges in general, but specifically on fiscal relief, what has been the biggest challenges for international cooperation?
Yeah, the biggest challenge actually that countries normally during the crisis tend to look inward and then tend to put, of course, naturally, put their national interests first. So especially during this kind of crisis, when the uncertainty is high, then fiscal as the main instrument for economic support need to be secured for the use in the domestic for domestic purpose. That's what many countries actually think at the moment. So a bit different than the 2008 crisis, when we already knew exactly where the problem is, and the problems was being addressed straight away immediately during the 2008 financial crisis. So we at that time countries also knew that the fiscal support that they need basically in that amount. So they can spare some part of their fiscal support to make an international commitment. But currently, we don't have that kind of perspective. We still don't know what happens in 2021, for example. At least during the G20 summit in April, they didn't have any idea how far or how severe the economic situation would be. So the fiscal support might also be needed more for the domestic purpose. Of course, that kind of things can be addressed with the coordinations and greater communication and greater understanding to each other. But unfortunately, the geopolitical environment, geopolitical situations at the moment do not really support that kind of greater understanding between different parties in G20, for example. We've seen the U.S. and China tension that has been escalating during the COVID-19 period. We expected perhaps this pandemic put a stop, make this kind of tensions deteriorate, but instead we've seen some kind of escalations on the tension. So that make that kind of greater understanding and cooperation would be more difficult to do, especially on this fiscal relief.
Okay, thank you, Yose. Next, I think I'll go back to Pak Hendra again, if I may. Pak Hendra, regarding travel bubble, this is an issue that's been discussed quite widely in recent times. A lot of people, especially from the tourism industry, is looking forward to actually realization of these travel bubbles. But I think we have also heard a lot of pessimisms from people and saying that we're not ready yet. What kind of mechanism would be perfect for this? How do you see the prospect of establishing this with maybe countries in Europe? I don't know, but I guess starting off from our neighbors is already very difficult to actually realize this travel bubble. How do you see the prospect in actually in this?
Yeah, thank you, Bu Vivi. It's very interesting questions. I would like to say one point about this travel bubble. When Indonesia starts discussing travel bubble with other countries, one key element is about the trust. I mean, like the trust about the trust from both sides. The trust about the ability of the government to handle the pandemic, and also what's the plan and the preventive measures and so on. And then when so far we have the travel bubble, or what we call it travel corridor arrangement with 3 countries, UAE, United Arab Emirates, and now with China, and also with Korea. Now we are negotiating with Singapore as well. I think it's quite somehow when we seen these arrangements, it's not that simple somehow. I mean, we need more coordinating. We need a concerted efforts among our institutions. So this from our side, but from other side also we need to see whether I think the country also acknowledge our progress, our efforts. It means like that's why I think currently why Indonesia, I think our main priority on tourism, how to build the confidence measures to other countries. That Indonesia now seriously what we call handle the pandemic. For instance, when people like to travel to Bali, and then we try to think about, I think maybe we can create a travel bubble to Bali, but of course, in so far we only have travel bubble, or we call it essential travel for business, not for business purposes, and also for the government or diplomats, but not for the tourism industry yet. So in this part, I think if it comes, when you back to your question, what's the prospect with the Europe? I think during my discussion with my European colleagues, I got something that somehow we need to see the perspective, the whole Europe. Maybe we cannot only think about Germany, for instance, only with Switzerland, for instance, but also with entire Europe. Why? Because this is about like this pandemic, about like this is communicable disease. There will be multiplier what we call impact on this pandemic. That's why I think we need to be careful. I think how far about the readiness, and also about the instruments, the instrumental support for this one. I mean, like, let's say, does the country acknowledge our PCR test, for instance? But if I'm traveling to Europe, I think do I need to travel? Do I need to only give my PCR test I took in Jakarta or Indonesia, and then they acknowledge it. It's kind of like certified, but it's not really, because some other country they have different treatment on it. If you're traveling to Switzerland this day, they don't need like PCR test from us. They just like let us in for business or for a business or diplomat, and so, but not for the countries. Somehow they need further procedure. We need to wait until like maybe to do some self quarantine for 14 days. Of course, for business people it's not easy because the business must run smoothly. So in this part, I think we need further discussion. And in this part, I think we already start discussing with our colleague in Europe or at some embassies here from European countries to seek the possibility about this arrangement. So the prospects there, of course, but it takes time to have it. Now I think we try to see. I think our experience based. We also like to what we call it to adopt. What I'm going to say is it might be good anyway if we start having one with one country in Europe, and then it can be a good pilot project with other countries. But so far, I think not there yet, but at least it is on our pipeline. So that's the news I can share with you. But again, of course, there is also intention for us to having discussion with our colleague from European counterpart about this this arrangement.
Okay, thank you so much for the elaboration, Pak Hendra. Next question. I think this is quite interesting. I'd like to ask this question to Yose first, and then I'd like to ask Dr. Ziegenhain to also maybe make some comments about this. Yose, there's a question regarding omnibus law in Indonesia as an effort to increase competitiveness and productivity. Do you think this is part of I don't know, economic recovery? There are a lot of challenges towards this issue here in Indonesia. A lot of discourse going on about it. How do you see this discussion as part of our discussion today about economic recovery? And maybe after Yose answers, I'd like to ask Dr. Ziegenhain, because Germany has had experience with reforms. Well, not really similar to this, but in one way or the other, it's basically reform to help economic recovery as well. So maybe you can give some insights from the experience of Germany. So Yose, over to you.
Yeah, I think this is a good momentum for Indonesia to have that kind of reform, and the omnibus law is a good starting point. Again, this is just a starting point for economic reform, because what the omnibus law tried to do, basically try to do the reform from the top, try to align all the high-level regulations before, perhaps after that, have to be followed by making harmonizations of regulations at the lower level and also at the local government. But this is a starting point, and the time. I think the time is very perfect, because there is a kind of like a saying in Indonesia, especially among Indonesian policy analysis, that good times lead to bad policy, bad times normally leads to good policy. So hopefully it would be this bad time hopefully would lead to good policy. Although unfortunately the challenge to pass for the omnibus law seems to be abundant, yeah, and it is not easy, or also even if it passed to implement the omnibus law, but we also need to be careful with this omnibus law, especially for the government, because this omnibus law currently already becomes a kind of like a symbol for reform. So the government needs to pass the law. The government needs to make it happen. Otherwise, the credibility of the government and in managing Indonesian economy will be at risk. Even just to start the reforms, if we fail, or if the government fails to pass it as a law, then the credibility of Indonesia's economic management will be at risk, because even just to start the reforms cannot be done, and how they can go on with a bigger reform. So that's my opinions. The government of Indonesia and also the parliaments need to work hand in hand to make sure that this kind of laws would be passed.
Mr. Ziegenhain, please.
Yeah, I agree with the positions of Dr. Yose. I think it's very important for Indonesia to gain economic competitiveness, and I think the law has some good approaches to, you know, the complex and legal situation, which is creates to uncertainty for investment, must be changed somehow. And I think the omnibus law has some good approach in that. My recommendation: keep two controversial points out. One is the labor issue. I would not discuss this in the context of the omnibus law, because this is, you know, creates resistance among many people. And the other thing is the environmental impact. Also, I would take out of the omnibus bill, because this is also, how to say, quite controversial. But I think the rather economic issues of the omnibus bill are in general supportive. Okay, then you had a second question about Germany, experience with reform. Does this refer to this question in the, let's say, in the text which I got here in the chat?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, you can refer to that one as well.
Okay, but Hartz IV, which is mentioned, is a reform of the welfare state system. Yeah, that's a bit different. And it's not about economic recovery. It's a bit complicated. I don't know if it really fits. It does, you know. Okay, the person who asked me seems to know what is Hartz IV. Yeah. Shall I answer in detail, or you think it's necessary? But I think it's not really fitting for the Indonesian context.
Sure, yeah. That's why I omitted from my question. I reframed the question, because I do think it might not be fit with our discussion. But maybe if the person who asked the question is interested in further elaboration, then maybe he or she can drop you an email to probably discuss this further.
You will find my email in the internet, and then just drop me an email, and I will answer your questions.
Fantastic. So we only have like about 10 minutes left. So maybe this will be the last question. I'd like to ask maybe first Dr. Ziegenhain to answer this, and maybe later on comments from Pak Hendra probably. This is regarding, you know, Germany as a development partner for Indonesia. There are at least two questions in relation to this. Maybe I'll put them together. One is interested about, you know, whether Germany is interested, because Indonesia and throughout Southeast Asia, there are a lot of infrastructure projects. Whether Germany is interested in any of those in terms of furthering, you know, economic relations with any of the countries in Southeast Asia, and also in capacity building. But in terms of capacity building, Germany has been one of the longest partners in terms of, you know, capacity building in Indonesia. And, you know, what are the prospects going forward on what sectors is Germany looking forward in this regard? So maybe first insights from Germany, if you have, Dr. Ziegenhain, and maybe then comments by Pak Hendra, because you're the one who handles these issues on a daily basis. Please, Dr. Ziegenhain.
Of course, Germany as a development partner is supporting the building of infrastructure in Indonesia and ASEAN. I mean, that's part of the agenda since 20 years. And I mean, a lot of German companies also active in building some kind of infrastructure. And it's also, I think, no, it's not anymore among the three major topics of German development cooperation with Indonesia. There were health, transport, healthcare, and now it's climate change. But I think transport was always among the top, let's say, focal points of German-Indonesian development cooperation. And the other point, capacity building, you know, there's also a big point. I mean, political foundations like the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung here, or Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, and Friedrich Naumann Stiftung, they're all in Indonesia. like political foundation building, capacity building for political organization, also for the broader public. And yeah, of course, GIZ and all the other development organizations of Germany are here and trying to give advice and to improve the capacities of also local, let's say, local government officials, civil society organizations, and many others. I think Germany is willing to do that and has a lot of programs running in terms of, as I said, first infrastructure, but also capacity building for the society in general.
Okay, Pak Hendra, any comments?
Yeah, yes, I think I would like to mention about the infrastructure, because I think what we are doing now with the under the development cooperation with Germany is about the green infrastructure, one of our priority as well, because currently both I think our leading agency with the GIZ and also the KfW discuss about, I think, what kind of project that we can conduct under this green infrastructure. But of course, this one, there are around 2.5 billion euro that we need to utilize this one. But I think the challenging about this one as well, we need to identify what kind of project that bring more benefit to the people. So what we call it, the philosophy of this development cooperation with Germany, for sure, we need to put something like what we call it, not only about this about the cooperation, but also how to the benefit of this cooperation to our people. So, and then on the capacity building, I like to associate with Ziegenhain. I know that there are many sectors that we need to focus on capacity building, but the most important thing as well, I think we shouldn't forget about, I think, how to bring up to upgrade, I think, our skilled labor, how to enter the global market, how to support our industry in the future. And in this part, Germans has a strategic role in this part. So I think beside that, I think we would like to see as well on capacity building in the future with Germany. We need to also to focus something on more specific sectors like what we call it, small medium enterprises. Still our focus is, but some countries also lend their assistance, but we would like to see, I think, the Germans way to bring our product to European market. I think that's all. I think the priority on German on development cooperation with Germany. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Hendra. There are still a few questions left in the list, but I'm afraid that we might be running out of time already. I'd like to give, if there are any, I'd like to give, maybe a minute or two to all of the speakers if they have any last remarks or last comments. Maybe help me rounding up a discussion a little bit. I'll do it in the same order as the speaker. So I'll start with you again, Pak Hendra, if you'd like to help me a little bit rounding up the discussion.
Right. Yeah. I think, first of all, Muhibat, thank you so much, because this is very important for me as well, because currently I try to find out what's the strategic way and how to bring up our bilateral cooperation in more effective in this challenging time. I think the most important thing for us now is we need to bring all stakeholders sitting together to bring, like, what we call it, new mechanism with all stakeholders. We have to bring all stakeholders into any level of cooperation with Germany. Not the governments only facilitate, only as a facilitator, but of course the most important thing how to put the important role of the business community, the academics, the media, and the people. So this is the essence of the bilateral cooperations. So in this part, of course, that's why I think in my last presentation I mentioned about this strategic approach, because we want to see something strategic, not like business as usual anymore. We want to see this, our Indonesian relation with Germany is totally different what with two other relations we had in with other European countries. More special, I think, more meaningful. So that's my what we call it, my personal goals as a director of North and Central Europe, including Germany. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Pak Hendra. Yose?
Yeah, thank you, Vivi. I think we have discussed a lot about the possible cooperations, especially during the economic recovery era. But equally important is also cooperations in the post-COVID era, which might be different than the previous era that we have. At least for one thing, the connectivity that we've been talking about would change a lot. It's not. Maybe we will depend more on the digital connectivity or digital form of connectivity, and then both countries, Indonesia and Germany, can do a lot of things, can do a lot of cooperations to enter this kind of new era, especially in the technology and capacity building programs, or even better, also to shape and to form the rules of the game during this new digital era by promoting, by advancing the current discussions in many multilateral organizations, in many multilateral forums, for example, that would allow for better better orders, better economic orders in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Yose. Mr. Ziegenhain.
Yeah, a lot of useful things have already been said by my colleagues, Dr. Jose and Hendra. Yeah, maybe let me say we talked about the, let's say, recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, both countries, Indonesia and Germany, are severely affected, as most parts of the world. And I think what we can learn is that cooperation is needed, that not protectionism and isolationism are the way out, but that it's better to have more connectivity, to have more cooperation in the future, and this will enhance the life of both countries, of Indonesia and Germany. Of course, the two countries alone cannot, change the whole world. And like everything, it's, as already mentioned, it has to do in the multilateral framework, in the institution, international organizations where both countries are located. And as is between ASEAN and EU, I think that would be a good level where Germany and Indonesia can play their parts to improve the economic and all the other cooperation which is necessary to let's say with COVID, it's unsure how the future will be, but I think it's also, we need to think a bit in the long term. It's not enough to say we must continue with this lockdown and with these measures if times are not changing 3, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months. I think after a while, there must be also some point where must be thought of a new approach, maybe in terms of connectivity. Maybe, for example, to allow tourism to Bali in the long run, if the situation is a bit safer, but maybe not 100% safe, that people come there with a 14 days quarantine and then can spend their holiday for the next 14 days there, and so on. There must be some approaches. At least you should think of this instead of saying for all time, as long as there's one case of COVID, we must close down our country. I think this is not a good perspective for the long run, but there need to be more connectivity between Germany and Indonesia, but between most countries in general as well. Maybe let's say it like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ziegenhain. I think all the participants can agree with me that it has been a very rich discussion. I personally enjoyed it very much and learned a lot from all the three speakers. So I think on behalf of CSIS and Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, and also the participants who join us from both Zoom and YouTube, I would like to thank Pak Hendra, Yose, and Dr. Ziegenhain for the wonderful insights, and also for sharing with us some of the important issues that you're currently working on. And I think to a lot of people, this would be a lot of very beneficial for our collective effort in trying to get out of this economic crisis, and for Indonesia and Germany to recover from this economic crisis. So thank you again to all of our three wonderful speakers. And with this, before I end our dialogue for today, let me just introduce that tomorrow we will have the third and last session of this series of webinar. The title is The Use of Technology in Handling the COVID-19 Outbreak. If you hear our three speakers today, in one way or the other, have mentioned about the digital era, the use of technology in economic recovery, and so on. And tomorrow we will discuss, we will focus on these very important issues, the use of technology in handling the COVID-19 outbreak. So, and tomorrow my colleague Dr. Fitriani will chair the session, and I hope that all the participants who tune in today and yesterday can join us again tomorrow for another, hopefully, very rich and useful discussion. So again, thank you to all speakers. Thank you to my colleagues in CSIS, and thank you also for colleagues from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. I see Mr. Jan Senkir here. Thank you so much, Mr. Senkir, for continuing cooperation with CSIS. And hopefully I will see all of you again tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you. Thank you all.